Hello everyone, back to today's second video, doing the GWV Sunday Round Up for today's second video. Earlier on today, we released a video having a look at summers in years ending with the number 8. So sort of 2008, 1998, 1988 and so on, right way back into the Victorian era, because there is a peculiar singularity about these summers in years ending in 8, that they tend to be very, very poor summers. And of course we've got another summer in a year ending in the number 8 for this year, summer 2018. So will we have another very poor summer to add to all of those other summers in years ending in the number 8? Well, it's too early to say that, but certainly it's quite an interesting video in terms of all those past summers in years ending in the number 8. So have a look at that and see what you think. It's here on the homepage, just a bit of fun really. Later on today it will be placed on the summer 2018 summer updates page, and there will be a written report that goes with that as well. Full summer updates will begin from March, so not too much longer to wait for those. As I say, this second video today is the GWV Sunday Round Up. So we're going to have a look at solar activity. We're going to have a look at what's happening in the stratosphere. We're going to have a look at some of our indexes, such as the AO and the NAO. And we'll have a look at where next week to 10 days as well. The cold spell is wobbling a little bit. So we only get it colder at the middle part of the week, but then what happens after that is a lot of uncertainty. So I'll talk you through all of that right now. We're going to begin by having a look at solar activity. So this is the latest image of the solar disk on our side of this day from solarham.net, and we are completely spotless again, so there's no sunspots to be seen at all on the solar disk today, and solar activity is expected to remain at very low levels for the next 3 days. This is the GWV Sunday Roundup solar activity tracker sent through by our good friend James Ackrill. This was sent through yesterday, well last night, updated to yesterday, and we can see that we are at a very minimal level of solar activity now. So this is where we was sort of through the spring last year at this level, quite a low level of activity, but generally on that sort of line just there. Now we've gone under that line, so we are now at a very, very low level of solar activity. I'm not sure we're at true solar minimum yet, because whilst we are getting many spotless days now, all of these orange lines and spots down here indicating spotless sort of condition on the sun with the sunspots. Those are spotless days. Whilst we are getting a lot of those now, we do still have various days where we are getting a few sunspots coming through. So I'm not sure at true solar minimum yet. When we get to true solar minimum, we'll have several weeks, if not months possibly, of no sunspots whatsoever. So we're not there yet, but we are now at a very, very low minimal level of solar activity. Of course, a far cry from the big spike in solar activity that occurred back around the early part of September when we began the winter updates. The reason we look at solar activity is that there is a connection between being at a minimum level of solar activity, so not having too many sunspots, and having increased risk of northern blocking. And so colder winters in the UK and Europe tend to coincide around or just after solar minimum. Big thanks to Jane sending that through, and we'll keep an eye on the solar roundup, the Sunday Roundup solar activity tracker over the coming few weeks and months. Looking at sea surface temperature anomalies next. This is the situation where we did last week's Sunday Roundup, Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, the two areas we're specifically interested in. This is the situation now, the latest image from NOAA as of the 11th of January 2018 looks like that. So over the week there's been very little change. Really, the weak La Nina continues, definite La Nina signal going on then through the Equatorial Pacific Ocean from Peru to Indonesia. So that hasn't really altered in the past week. Before too much on, we'll start to see that weakening. It always weakens as you go into the Northern Hemisphere spring, whether it's La Nina or El Nino. So before too much on, that's going to start to fade away. But over the past week, it's been very little change there. In the Northern Pacific, so very little change either. And in the Atlantic, again, very little change. We still remain quite significantly warmer than average up in the Norwegian Sea with those sea surface temperature anomalies. The Atlantic Ocean itself, again, is generally in quite a warmish state this winter. In fact, over the past week, possibly some of these central areas around here have warmed ever so slightly over the past week. But generally, the North Atlantic is warm. The La Nina signal continues in the extra-Pacific Ocean. In the Northern Pacific Ocean, there's been very little change over the week. Looking at the situation in the stratosphere next. So this is the from the JMA website. This is telling us where we've been with stratospheric temperatures at 10 HPA. The grey line here is a trend line for time of year. The black line is where we've been with the temperatures at 30 HPA over the course of the season. So we start there and we go down to there. We had quite a cold stratosphere through the course of November. Then through early part of December it went warmer. But since the end of December and into January, had a very cold stratosphere indeed. So we really are at an unusually cold level now in terms of the temperature at 30 HPA in the stratosphere over the North Pole. When you have that level of cold in the stratosphere, it would normally coincide with a strengthening of the polar vortex and consequently increasing the westerlies across the Atlantic and into Europe, bringing rain-bearing weather systems, lots of wet and windy and mild winter conditions. This winter has been very unusual and very unique in that we haven't really seen a connection between the stratosphere, where we've got these very cold temperatures, and the troposphere, which is the boundary of the atmospheric weather, is taking place. We've seen a disconnect this year, so the westerlies have been quite a lot weaker than you would tend to expect with such a cold stratosphere. And when we come to sort of sum up this winter and think about what's happened to it at the end of the winter, that's one of the things we'll probably have to think about why that's happened, because you would think by looking at that temperature at 30 HPA that we should be having a very stormy, very wet and very mild winter, the kind of winter we had in 2013, 2014, actually. Just continuous rain-bearing weather systems, lots of heavy rain, lots of gales, and very mild temperatures. This winter hasn't panned out like that, so that would be one of the things to think about once the winter is over, why that's happened. It's the same situation at 10 HPA as well. So again, the grey line here is the trend for time of year. The black line tells us where temperatures currently are, where they've been through the winter of 2017-18 at 10 HPA. And again, cold and average temperatures there in that top level of the atmosphere in the stratosphere, significantly now underneath the grey line. We should be starting to tick up the temperatures on average. You would be generally expecting to begin to lift the temperatures up in the stratosphere now. Should be past the coldest point of the year. And as I say, we aren't there at this point. It's still very, very cold at both 30 and 10 HPA. Been watching the GFS over the past few weeks, for well, past week or two, for signs of a sudden stratospheric warming. So about a week ago, the GFS started to pick up on the chance of a sudden stratospheric warming through the final week of January. And it's been running with that consistently, or it was running with that consistently over several days over the past week. But just yesterday, the GFS started to back away from that. I did a video last night saying that the GFS looks like it's beginning to back away from that idea of a sudden stratospheric warming for the final week of January. Let's see what the very latest GFS run is showing for the temperature at 10 HPA over the next 2 weeks. So these blue and purple colours, they're the cold temperatures in the stratosphere over North Pole. Right now, we're starting today, and we're looking to infiltrate yellows, orange and red colours into, well, starting off around Russian Siberia, and then infiltrating them into the North Pole. If that happens, we're having, or we're getting a sudden stratospheric warming. So we run through the early part of the GFS run, and we see very little sign of a sudden stratospheric warming, but by 22nd of January, we are beginning to get a warming occurring over Europe and starting to heading towards parts of Russia. So this isn't a sudden stratospheric warming, but where we've got these green and yellow colours appearing, that's the temperature beginning to tick up a little bit in the stratosphere over Europe and over the Eurasian continent as well. Into the extended range of the GFS model, the latest GFS, and this is what happens. So the southern stratospheric warming was due to occur anytime around the 23rd to the 25th of January. And this is the 23rd of January just here. This is 24th of January, this is 25th of January, and you see that whilst the colours are lifting up, they're going more towards yellow colours here across Russia. We're struggling now to lift those temperatures, certainly to southern stratospheric warming levels. We're not lifting those temperatures into the red colours up to the 25th of January anyway. Now, beyond that, we do intensify the colours a little bit more over Russia, so they're going towards sort of orange colours. But again, they're not reaching the level of temperature that the GFS was forecasting consistently up to yesterday. And also, they're delaying it as well, so it's still this idea that are we going to get this southern stratospheric warming for the final week of January? We are going to get a warming of the stratosphere over Eurasia during the final week of January. But are we going to get that to the level of a sudden stratospheric warming, taking it to sort of the red colours on these charts, and are we going to infiltrate that into the North Pole? Will it have an effect on the troposphere? It's all very much undecided at the moment, but I do think what's happened over the past day or so is that the GFS has backed off, it's backed away from this idea of a southern stratospheric warming quite a lot, actually. Certainly the operational runs have. I haven't been through the ensembles, but certainly the operational GFS runs are backing away from that consistent southern stratospheric warming signal through the final week of January. And the warming that does occur around the 23rd, 24th now is quite modest. Beyond that, we do see quite a significant warming, not southern stratospheric warming, but quite a significant warming, but it's not getting any closer. It's continually being pushed back. So whether this ever comes to anything, just have to wait and see a little bit longer. ECMWF looks like that, so now we can go up to the 23rd of January with the ECMWF. This is the temperature forecast from the University of Berlin website for 10 HPA in the stratosphere. And again, we see the same story as with the GFS really for this period, the 23rd of January, day 10. We are seeing that we have got a rather modest warming occurring across Eurasia. So that's those orange colours just there. This is the North Pole of the Northern Hemisphere just there, by the way, this black X. So again, we are seeing that the ECMWF by day 10 is forecasting a warming of the stratosphere over Eurasia. But again, whether this would intensify and whether it would move itself into the North Pole and become a genuine southern stratospheric warming, we can't say, because the ECMWF only runs to day 10, so it only goes to like the 23rd of January. Beyond that, we're into a realm of speculation. So we're going to have to wait and see a little bit longer whether this, we're certainly going to get a warming of the stratosphere. It's going to occur over Europe. It's going to move into Russia. Whether it intensifies to a sudden stratospheric warming and whether it gets into the pole through the final week of January, that still is to be determined, and we will keep an eye on it over the course of the coming week. But certainly the GFS operationals have backed away from it quite a bit. Arctic and North Atlantic Oscillation observed and forecast charts next. So the black line here tells us where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. Red lines at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go. So we're around neutral at the moment with the AO. We're going to go positive in the next few days. So we're going to have a positive AO interlude. But then the GFS ensembles are forecasting quite a drop actually in the Arctic Oscillation through the final stages of January, which is this period just here. So this is telling us that the GFS ensembles certainly want to produce some sort of high pressure OPA. Remember, it's just that's the reflective state of the atmosphere. It's not driving anything, just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. So GFS ensembles want to produce some sort of high pressure blocking system over the pole through this final stage of January. And again, where that sits is going to be critical. Remember, that's happening before any southern stratospheric warming has occurred. This is the North Atlantic Oscillation observed and forecast chart. So again, we are just there Black line tells us where we've been with the NAO, red line's where GFS Ensembles forecast us to go. We're just there, so we are positive with the NAO. We're neutral with the AO, we're positive with the NAO. Both indexes are going positive this week, so we are going to strengthen the westerly flow, albeit it will be quite a cold westerly flow. And then the NAO is going down towards neutral territory, I think, through the final stages of January. So we've got the NAO going neutral and the Arctic Oscillation going negative, if we believe the GFS ensembles. And that should, therefore, be a indication of weakening the westerly flow as going to a final stage of January, possibly producing somewhat colder conditions. However, look at this. This is the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. Looking at London today, these are upper air temperatures, and look at all this scatter that we've got going on from around a week's time. So we're starting off around here with the upper air temperatures reasonably mild, although it's fairly chilly on the surface, and then we're going to get our push of colder air through the early part of the coming week. So Monday, Tuesday will turn cold. There'll be winter showers in the northwest. By the way, we'll probably update Snowwatch this evening. Now, Wednesday, we bring an area of low pressure across the country. That's got a big warm sector associated with it, so there's uncertainty and doubt about that. The main thing on Wednesday now looks like it's going to be the wind. Late Wednesday night and into Thursday, we're going to have some really severe gales, but the snow risk is being reduced a lot due to the fact that there's a big warm sector coming in with it, although the exact track of that low pressure is very much still uncertain. Once that low pressure gets out of the way, the rest of the week turns quite cold up to the weekend, and then that's when we've got the scatter. So it's as early as the 21st of January to the 23rd. Interestingly, the period where the stratosphere is beginning to warm up across Eurasia. In that period, we have got a huge amount of scatter. So we've got some ensemble members that are going up to here, plus 10, which is very warm, actually, in terms of the upper air temperatures. Some going up to that level. But other ensemble members are down here at minus 10. So it's something like a 20-degree temperature differential. But what it does tell us is that the chance of a prolonged cold spell, certainly within the GFS ensembles, has reduced quite a lot, because there was fairly good agreement as soon as yesterday, as near as yesterday, fairly good agreement that we're going to have quite a prolonged cold interlude setting up this week and probably lasting over the weekend, maybe even into the following week. Now that is much more uncertain, and again, you just see how uncertain it is by the extent of the scatter that we have here within these GFS ensembles. So really from next weekend onwards, it's very difficult to make a punt for what is going to happen, except for the fact that the GFS is backing away. As it's backing away from the southern stratospheric warming, it's also backing away from the chance of a prolonged cold spell setting up this side of sort of the end of January. Temperature anomalies for next week are looking like this from the 14th of January to 22nd of January. Generally, England and Wales is coming out a little bit milder than average and colder than average for Scotland. Again, that's quite a big flip on what we've been seeing with these anomaly charts over recent days. Precipitation anomalies for the next week, the 14th, 22nd of January, coming out above average, a wetter than average week coming up, as it is for most northern western parts of Europe. Right, the all-important charts then, and this is Wednesday, when we've got this cold west-northwesterly wind at 6 o'clock in the morning, which will be bringing wintry showers. Here's our area of low pressure developing along the jet stream. This is causing lots and lots of uncertainty in its exact track. But the latest idea with the GFS particularly is to take this low pressure to our north. So that situation at 6 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday, when the low pressure is here off the coast of West Scotland and Northern Ireland. On the southern side, we're going to have very tight packed isobars, so it's going to be very windy on the southern side of this low pressure. Remember, it's moving into cold air, but the chance of snow, where we get the engagement of the mild and cold air, is always on the northern and eastern side of this low pressure. And because this low pressure is being pushed a lot further north than was the case yesterday, that means most of the country actually finds itself within a warm sector, and so the chance of snow becomes much reduced. There's the upper air temperatures for 6 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday. Most of the country's still cold then, but look at this big yellow area. That's the warm sector. and that's covering most parts of the country actually by midnight on Thursday. So anywhere that's in that yellow area is going to have rain. It can't snow when the upper air temperatures are above 0 degrees at 850 HPA. So England and Wales has heavy rain on that situation. Scotland does have a risk of snow with this low pressure because you're on the northern side, on the cold side essentially of the low pressure. So there you do have a risk of snow on Wednesday into Thursday. Most of the country, it's rain. And the main issue for most parts of the country, away from Scotland, where I say we could get snow, most parts of the country, the main issue with this low pressure is wind. Very tightly packed isobars there at midnight on Wednesday. So that's a real windstorm, bringing possibly severe gales with gusts of 80 miles an hour to parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. I would expect this will be a named storm by the UK Met Office and the Irish Met Office before too much longer. That low pressure is into the North Sea through the course of Thursday, and we return to those cold northwesterly winds, bringing in wintry showers, and that continues up to Friday as well. So the cold northwesterlies come back in the second half of the week, and the risk of snow showers, or wintry showers anyway, for northwestern parts of the country increases again. Now you remember that yesterday we was turning the winds into the north, bringing down proper Arctic winds next weekend. GFS much less keen on that idea now, so Saturday still looks a relatively cold day with a little bump of high pressure across the country, but no Arctic northerlies. And then by Sunday, this is a week away, Sunday we're starting to bring in a much milder push of air from the southwest. So those Arctic northerlies, the GFS and, to be fair, the ECM also, and other models too, were forecasting for next weekend, they've been eradicated, and now we're pushing up much milder southwesterly winds. Very changeable in terms of what's happening with the models at the moment. Very unusually low model reliability, and then this continues into the following week. So we're going up towards day 10. This takes us to day 10, which is Wednesday, 24th of January. We're bringing up mild, wet and windy weather from the southwest at that point. Totally different to what the GFS was showing on its midday run yesterday when I did yesterday's second video. Finally, the ECMWF looking like this. Cold northwesterly winds up to Wednesday. There's that area of low pressure developing along the jet stream. As we go through to Thursday, wet and windy weather sweeping in across the country at midnight on Thursday. Again, there's a big warm sector with this. So, I mean, Scotland is still just about on the cold side of this low pressure, which, remember, is to the north, the east of the low. But most parts of the country on that scenario are within the warm side of that low pressure in that warm sector. So you're just talking about rain for the bulk of the country there on overnight Wednesday to Thursday, but with very tightly packed isobars, so stormy winds. That's the main problem there. The low pressure is out of the way by midnight on Friday, and that's taking us back to those cold northwesterly winds, which bring in a return of wintry shower fixing the northern western parts of the country. Now Saturday we are beginning to turn the winds into the north, so the ECM still has that northerly coming down from the Arctic, lasting through most of next weekend. So this keeps us cold through next weekend. ECM reliability has been a bit dodgy though, I have to say, this winter. So whether this will still be showing these cold northerlies next weekend on the midday run of the ECM, we'll have to wait and see. But I think the ECM has been fairly poor with its reliability so far this winter. But then so has all the other models. It is a feature of this winter that long-range modelling and short-range modelling, they've all been very poor with their reliability this winter. The ECM is keeping it cold through next weekend, however, and still quite cold actually into the start of the following weeks. This is Monday 22nd of January. The Atlantic is trying to come in, but generally we are still within pretty cold air even at that point. By day 10 though, we are reintroducing the southwesterly winds and returning milder, wetter and windier once again. That is a very long way off, of course, in this pattern. So, been a lot of changes in just a few hours. First of all, in terms of what's happening with the stratosphere. So, we are going to get a warming of the stratosphere across Europe and Russia, so across Eurasia, in the sort of next week to 10 days. That is going to occur. But whether that reaches the level of a sudden stratospheric warming, whether it gets into the pole, whether it would be able to change the pattern in terms of the troposphere, set up some blocking, that is all very much to be determined. And the GFS has backed away from this stratospheric warming quite a lot. And then in terms of the weather in the next week to 10 days, so initially we get the cold push of northwesterly winds. They will bring wintry showers to all the western parts of the country, sort of Monday, Tuesday to Wednesday. This low pressure late Wednesday to Thursday has been pushed northwards, which means most of us are just looking at rain now with this low pressure and very stormy winds as well. After that, we return to the cold northwesterlies in the second half of this week, and then beyond that, that's when we've got all of that scattered within the GFS ensembles, and I think it's too far away to be able to say what happens from next weekend. But probably we have backed away anyway from the chance of setting up a extended cold spell. Right, so that's everything in the Sunday Roundup. Don't forget to check out the video looking at summers occurring in years ending in the number 8. And this evening, we will have a little bit of a snow watch, just because there's going to be some wintry showers for northern western parts of the country, especially in the early part of the coming week. So we will have a look at that in Snow Watch, and probably have a look at those gales as well. So it'll be kind of like a Snow Watch, Storm Watch combined, if you like. Right, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.